You're listening to
Sound.
Insightful.
Bible teaching.
For a
Meaningful.
For a meaningful Christian walk. Last week we completed the tour of the tabernacle and started off by saying that the things that were going to be shared, they may not match your experience. And they might even be a little bit hard to understand, but that's okay, because we just keep going on in our understanding and in our growth. This week we're going to talk about something more, which I think will be understandable, but then there's just a question of where are you in the process. And this, again, it's not to be discouraged. Every week we see this family, the Hagues. They got two boys, and the older one, Teddy, he just, like every week he grows like an inch. It seems like. I mean, I'm still taller than him, but he's only like 7 years old too. But he's growing. And so he shouldn't be discouraged. But yeah, he can't dunk a basketball yet. I can't either. At one point in my life, I almost could. But I'm not discouraged. I'm not going to keep trying. So these things, when you hear them, it might be like, I haven't had that experience. Or, where am I? In a way, it's like, don't worry about where you are. Don't worry about how tall you are right now, because you're growing. If you weren't growing, then you worry, right? But as long as we're advancing, as long as we're, going through the process, then we should be encouraged. So I just say that kind of as a opening word. Now tonight, we finished the tabernacle, but who serves in the tabernacle? Priest, right? And if you read Exodus 28, it's a long chapter, and it's all about all the clothing and the different accessories that the priest has to wear. Now, you're all wearing something. For those viewing at home, everyone's clothed. How much thought or consideration did you have about what you're going to wear? I mean, did it exceed 30 seconds? Was it just, the cleanest, dirty clothes that you've got, put those on? I have a little consideration. I usually change for this. But, it really matters, even for our appearance. But for the priests, it mattered a lot. It was life and death, and it's also whether you could actually do the job. It'd be like, maybe you can compare it. Okay, we're in the army. Okay, we're in God's army, but let's say we're in a regular military unit, and maybe someone here knows about that. But anyway, if you're going to go into battle, you'd say, well, okay, I think I'll wear a pair of jeans and put on my sneakers, and I got a nice t-shirt, it's a little warm today. Okay, let's go. No, I mean, you got to get all your body armor, you got to get your weapons, you've got to get everything. And, you've got to wear, I think, the right colors, too. So, you don't want to be mistaken for the enemy or some guy who's trying to infiltrate. So it really matters. And it's not being done just, God is kind of capricious and he likes to do things a certain way. All of these things, of course, this is Exodus. Everything's a picture. Everything's a type. And so we're going to very briefly get into this. But I hope you'll get an impression about how important this is. So Exodus 28, I don't have the whole chapter printed out here. But Jehovah tells Moses, bring Aaron. Aaron's going to be the high priest, and he's got sons, and they're also going to be part of the priesthood. Actually, the whole tribe of Levi is going to be in the priesthood. But only some can be the high priest. You have to be of the lineage of Aaron. Anyway, he says, you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and for beauty. So glory is something divine. Beauty is something human. So Christ, we just sang that song, right? Who is that song about? For we do not have. It's Christ, right? He's our real high priest. So he expresses God in his divinity, and he's got a perfect humanity in his beauty. So the priests are going to wear clothing for glory and for beauty. You ever think about, Angel, when you're going to get dressed, do you think this is for glory and beauty? I doubt it. I doubt even one time you had that thought. That's okay. Because I think probably everybody here probably never thought of that. The sisters maybe thought about beauty at least, but maybe not glory so much. Okay, here's the garments that you shall make: a breastplate and an ephod and a robe and a tunic of checkered work, a turban and a girding sash. So they shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and for his sons, that he may serve me as a priest. And they shall make the ephod of gold thread, of blue and purple and scarlet strands of fine twined linen, the work of a skillful workman. So the ephod is made of gold thread. You ever use gold thread? I think you've got to flatten gold sheets and cut it. And it's like thread. But anyway, this is divinity. Linen signifies fine humanity. It's different colors. This is Christ, divine and human mingled together. Now, how many of you have an ephod? How many of you know what an ephod is? Have you ever gone to I don't know where you go, Forever 21, or H&M, or I don't know what, J.C. Penney's, and say, where are your ephods? I need to get a new ephod. Some big ceremony's coming up. You know what it is? We don't know. It's a Hebrew word. It has no English translation. All we can say is, it's an ephod. It's something in the Bible. But there's a description kind of how it works and what it is. It's kind of like a vest. But it has certain elements to it. It has 2 shoulder pieces. And it's got a band. But then it says, you shall take, this is verse 9, you shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. 6 of their names on one stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, according to their birth. So they're like the engravings of a signet, and you make them, then you enclose them in settings of gold. So on the shoulders of this thing, they had 2 gold settings. Gold, again, is divinity. And this is holding 2 onyx stones, 2 precious stones, that have the names of all 12 of the sons of Israel. Being born on the shoulders, signifying strength. So, this is part of the ephod. And why are they there? It says they're there as stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before Jehovah on his 2 shoulders for a memorial. So Aaron the high priest would go in, remember the diagram of the tabernacle, go into the presence of God, and God would view him, and he's bearing essentially the whole nation of Israel. This typifies us. Christ, our high priest, is bearing us in strength. The shoulders are the strongest part. This is a memorial to God, right? This is a memorial. It's a remembrance. So this is one characteristic of the ephod. Now the other thing, what does this remind you of? Someone said it's like bejeweled. Yeah, like the game. I don't think that's where it came from. But in verse 15, we're going to spend the rest of our time on this. You shall make a breastplate of judgment. The work of a skillful workman, like the work of the ephod you shall make it, of gold, of blue, purple, scarlet strands, fine twined linen. So the material is just the same as the ephod. So there's a breastplate, and the breastplate is fastened to the ephod. There's like a band and a couple gold chains. And so one thing about this picture, take a really good look at it. One thing I know for sure, this is completely inaccurate. Because just like the ephod, actually we don't know what the breastplate looked like. It's got 12 precious stones. It's square and doubled. In other words, it's folded over. There's a front and a back. And there's 12 precious stones, 4 rows. So that's right. But then, I guess some of these stones, they try to translate it, but they're not 100% sure what they are. Where else in the Bible, this is just Bible quiz, where else in the Bible do you see 12 stones, 12 precious stones?
Revelation.
Yeah. Where? I mean, what thing? The Holy City, New Jerusalem, right. So the foundations, 12 precious stones. Here you've got 12 stones. 12 is a significant number in the Bible. There's a lot of significant numbers in the Bible. But 12 is always a number of God's building, but it's actually completion in God's administration. If you look in the book of Revelation, there's just a lot of 12s. 12, 12, 12. That's the end. But here you've got 12, and you've got 12 stones really built together. It's not, I'll give you, a bag of 12 stones. These are set in gold, again. So gold is the divine nature. And that's what holds them. That's the holding power, is divinity. But there are these 12 stones. And what about these stones? I'm not going to get into, an agate. You can look it up. And the more you look it up, they'll say some people think this was this. And so, some of them we know, jasper. What's a carbuncle? I think they think that's like a turquoise. But anyway, it really kind of doesn't matter. But there are 12 stones, and the stones shall be according to the names of the sons of Israel, and they shall be like the engravings of a signet, each according to its name for the 12 tribes. So each stone has a name inscribed on it. So Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah, each stone represents one tribe, and they have actually inscribed into it the name. Now, okay. So then, verse 29 and 30, it says, Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastplate of judgment on his heart when he goes into the sanctuary for a memorial before Jehovah continually. So here it's called the breastplate of judgment. That's significant. We'll get into that in a minute. But he's bearing their names on his heart. And again, Aaron the high priest typifies Christ as a high priest. This is bearing the names not on the shoulders now. Now it's on his heart. And this is something, of course, the heart is love, affection, tenderness. And he's bearing his people. Old Testament, it's the children of Israel. New Testament, it's the church. It's all the believers. So the Lord is bearing us even before Jehovah. He's bearing us in strength, and he's bearing us in love. So this is really good. But then we come to another mysterious thing. And you shall put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be on Aaron's heart when he goes in before Jehovah, and Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel on his heart before Jehovah continually. So I said, we don't know exactly what the breastplate looked like. This is too big. The thing is, it's about the size of your hand. So that's too big. But then you got these things, You shall put in the Urim and the Thummim. And there is no pictures, there's no paintings. We don't really know what it was, but we do know what the words mean. So Urim means illumination, and Thummim means completion. So, this is where it gets really cool. Now, how did God speak to people in the Old Testament? Prophets, that's one good way. There's a verse here. I'll skip ahead to this one. It's kind of towards the end. It's 1 Samuel 28:6. This is talking about Saul, King Saul. He was a bad king. He was the first king, but he was not what God wanted. But I think he was king just so the Lord could show the people, hey, this is what you want, you know. But then he got David, a king after his own heart. But Saul did not easily give up the kingship. Actually, he had to be killed. He wasn't going to give it up. He wanted to pass it on to his children. So at one point, he'd just done a lot of bad things. And then he inquired of a medium. He called the spirit of Samuel. It's really creepy. But anyway, Saul was not good. But in this verse it says, Saul inquired of Jehovah, but Jehovah did not answer him, not by dreams or by the Urim or by the prophets. So Urim and Thummim are really important for receiving the Lord speaking. Now, when Moses was alive, we know Moses would just, go into the presence of Jehovah and receive everything from him directly. So if you wanted to know what God is thinking, if Moses was there, you could say, hey, Moses, why don't you go ask for us? And he could. Moses died. Well, then what's Jehovah going to do? Well, in Numbers 27, it's talking here about Joshua. And it says, he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, and he shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before Jehovah. So the priest, having the breastplate with the Urim and the Thummim, is able to talk to Jehovah. How does this work? I would really, one day, after I'm dead, I can find out who actually constructed the breastplate. I could say, what did this thing look like? How was it really constructed? We know basically it's cloth, but then it's got gold with these 12 stones put in it. But then inside, you can put this thing called the Urim, and that's the illuminator. Anyway, if you want to get into it, like the source for this, we can talk about that offline. But the Urim is an illuminator, and it's filled with oil, typifying the Spirit, and there's fire from the altar, typifying the cross. So it's like a little lamp that they would put inside of the breastplate. And then this lamp would have illuminators that would shine through the 12 stones. So you could say, well, that's interesting. But this was like, Peter might remember this. I don't know if anybody else, you guys can text on your phone, right? Yeah, you should be able to. If you can't, you need some help. But you're going to send a text. It's really easy. You just, there's a keypad. You just type it out. When they first came out with texting, they didn't have like a computer keypad. They had the keys on your phone. It's one is ABC. And further back in the day, even before cell phones and texting, sometimes someone would advertise and they'd say, just call, and they'd have like some name or something. And that corresponds to some numbers on your phone, which is fine. I never know what to do when the name was more than 7 letters. It's like, anyway. But, you know, when you'd send a text with your just keypad, it's like you'd have to hit, I can't even remember how to do it, but anyway, there was a way to do it. And you could tediously type out your text. It was much more difficult than it is now. And now you can just talk into the microphone. You couldn't do that then. That's what this worked like. So the names, remember the names are inscribed here? In Hebrew, most all words are 3 letters. There's no vowels. So you'd have a bunch of letters inscribed here. But the way it would work, it wouldn't be like they'd light up. Actually, they would darken. So you've got, 12 stones lit up, and then we'd want to get a message, and one stone would darken. Maybe there's a way just one letter would darken. I don't know. But anyway, you could put the thing together, and you could get a message. Now, it sounds like, I don't know about this, but you go through the Old Testament, and you just see many examples of this. And, when children of Israel came back from captivity, I don't have this one on here. There was some discussion about, who was from the Holy Family and who wasn't, who was from the priesthood. Because they'd been in captivity, they lost their genealogy. They said, we can't decide this until we can get a priest with the Urim and the Thummim. So this is the way God would communicate. Now it seems like, well, can't he just speak to you? Well, I'm sure he could. But it's very significant the way this works. There's some examples here. One I really like is a little earlier in Samuel. We talked about this one on the Lord's Day. But David is there, and he hears Saul's coming for him, and he's in a city that he and his men had just delivered from the Philistines. And it's like, will they hand me over to Saul? And so there's this priest, a young priest that escaped, and he happened to bring an ephod with him. Very convenient, right? Samuel 23:9 says, David learned that Saul was planning evil against him. He said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. Because I want to know what's going to happen. And then he asked, is Saul going to come? And he says, he's going to come. And will the men of this city deliver us up? And the answer is, they will deliver you up. So they hightailed it out of that city. Now you could say, well, why didn't David just pray? Or this is the way God used through the priesthood to communicate his leading. It's called the breastplate of judgment, but actually God's judgment is the way he leads. Right? Should I do this? No. That's a very clear leading. Right? Should I break this law? Should I break this commandment? No, no, no. So his judgments, his statutes are all made known through this breastplate. And this is God's leading. Okay, so this is all very interesting. Do you think it's interesting? I think it's kind of cool. Now the Thummim, what's that? So the Urim is the light. What's this Thummim? It means completer, or completion. There's 12 stones. But if you take all the different letters, there's 18 different letters. Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters. So you need something more to get the full message. So there's something called the Thummim, and that fits in somewhere. Don't ask me where. But that also functions, for God to speak through the breastplate. So how does this apply to us? Okay. Now I said that on the one hand, this is the children of Israel, right? Their names are on it. On the other hand, this typifies the church. So if this is the way God leads, Where should you go today to get God's leading? He said the church. Now, what is the church? I was considering this a little bit. I know what the church is. But in Matthew, Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there I am in their midst. We all know that verse, right? And so that's very encouraging. Why didn't he just say, I'm with you whether you're with someone or not? Isn't Jesus with us?
Yes.
But then he makes the point, 2 or 3 gathering together. And when 2 or 3 of you agree on something, so the Lord always does things corporately. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's very much an individual aspect. We need to have, our personal relationship with the Lord. But God's desire is not just that we would have a personal relationship. God's desire is to have a built-up entity. This is held in divinity. It's all these stones, 12 stones, built together. They're not loose stones scattered about. So if I want some leading, I want to be with a bunch of precious stones who have something inscribed on them. Now, you remember Peter? Peter? You know what his name was? Simon, right? Jesus changed it to Peter, which is like an Anglicization, whatever, of the Greek word for stone. And Peter was always very impressed with stones, rightfully. He said in 1 Peter 2:5, it says, "You are living stones being built up as a spiritual house into a holy priesthood." Now, stones come in all kinds of size, different types. If we took here, okay, let's take a piece of granite and a piece of sandstone and a piece of slate and a piece of shale. We could have 12 stones. They're not transparent. So in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, we realize there's this process of transformation. Actually, even precious stones are a very good example of this. Many of them have gone through some type of transformation. They started out as something like a diamond. Diamond's carbon, right? But heat, pressure, the right environment, you get a certain kind of crystalline structure, and it becomes precious and transparent. If you just put a lump of charcoal up there, it's not precious and it is not transparent. So we all need to be clear. We need to be being transformed from one degree of glory into the next. I got Romans 12:2 on there. And then also we need to be inscribed. Now, in Revelation it says, the Lord will give us a new name. He'll give us a stone with a name written on it. This is very significant. The changing of the name always indicates transformation. We need to become precious stones. I got the last verse, 2 Corinthians 3:3. Since you are being manifested that you are a letter of Christ ministered by us, inscribed not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tablets of stone, but in tablets of hearts of flesh. We need Christ inscribed into us. Okay, I need the Lord's leading. I'm going to come into a gathering of Christians, and they're all just like pieces of mud. And there's no Christ inscribed into them. The Lord wants to lead you, but how can He? Even for us, how much Christ is inscribed into you will determine how much you can be led. Now here's the point I want to say. You can't rush this. But you can really slow it down, right? I can spend time with the Lord day by day. The inscribing is we see something. The Lord shows us something. We see a revelation. We see a vision. then we experience that. And so Paul said, eventually, you're a letter of Christ. When people see you, I don't need to say anything. Paul doesn't need to defend his ministry because he's been ministering into Angel. And Angel's been taking that and experiencing all these things. And so when someone sees him, it's just like, I'm just reading line by line of Christ in you. Because we've had that much Christ inscribed into our being. Then we take all of us collectively, and we're transparent, and we've got all these words inscribed on our heart. Then it's very easy for the Lord to speak. Most of the time, the Lord wants to speak to us, and we're just kind of cloudy, kind of muddy, not quite there. So then we resort to, you go to someone older and say, tell me what I should do. And I've learned enough. I'm never going to tell you what to do. Unless it's something like, my car is parked in a handicap zone, the tow truck's coming. Do you think I should move it? I wouldn't say, go pray about it. I'd say, move your car. Beyond that, I'm not going to give any advice. Right? So you can see collectively how this works. Actually, going back, we said that the Lord speaks a lot of times through negative situations. It's not so much the shining as it is the darkening. And you can see this in the New Testament. I mean, Paul wrote to the Corinthians 2 letters. First one's just full of negative, 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 negative. But through this, he was able to really minister Christ. If you look at the 7 epistles to the 7 churches in Revelation, one is positive. One is, kind of okay. And the other 5, there's big problems. So this is like, if you're seeing here, that's dark, that's dark, that's dark. Okay, what do we get out of this? We get the Lord's leading. We get his leading through his judgment. But again, this is corporate. Now, I'm not saying you can't receive an individual leading from the Lord. I'm not saying that. But I know in my experience, many times I don't know. I've got no leading. It's just like I'm praying, Lord, what should I do? What should I do? And it's like I'm not getting an answer. I've got to go into the temple. I've got to go into the church. And somehow, I've had this experience. It's like no one said anything. But just coming into that environment, suddenly I'm just clear. It's quite remarkable. Or maybe I'm not that clear, but I can fellowship. And we begin to fellowship with others. And then there's the light is there. They've got some Christ inscribed into them. I've got some Christ inscribed into me. And eventually the message starts to come out. And the leading through the Lord's judging becomes clear. So I'm going to stop here. I hope this isn't too much. But this type of the breastplate, it's not just really cool. This is really applicable to our experience. So don't settle for being an individual Christian. We need to be built together into this breastplate as one entity, and the Lord will bear us on his heart before Jehovah.